Hey everybody, Tom Stulis with today's Facebook Live I'm with True North Group, but we're here doing the the Facebook Live with with the Virginia Small Business Development Center. And today we're going to talk about application testing. Now, we've talked over the last several months about different types of layers of defense, and that if you approach your network in the same manner that you would approach protecting your house, you do that in different layers. Now, we've talked about vulnerability testing and patching and taking care of all of the necessary requirements for the operating system, but an application actually doesn't run on that operating system. It's considered like it uses the operating system as a host. So when you do that, you have a whole different set of vulnerabilities that need to be managed. And so when we go through these patches, and a lot of these vulnerability tools that we use really are only designed to assess the network, or not even the network, really the network devices and the operating system devices. And maybe on a high level, it looks at some application vulnerabilities. But because applications are written in many different languages by multiple different programmers and developers, and all of these applications do different things. So you have a mobile application that's on your phone. You have maybe a proprietary application that does a specific function for an industry, or just any type of application that we use to create or have a feature will have these challenges. So it requires additional testing because the applications that are being used can be exploited in different ways. And if you look at a lot of the issues that are today, a lot of the vulnerabilities that are identified with through the application. Someone's exploited a vulnerability in that application, and they, whether it be they input data into a field that causes a SQL injection or a buffer overflow. And what it does is they input things into these fields that the application wasn't expecting. And then what happens is the application gets confused and it may reset. And if it resets, sometimes it allows that individual to then input whatever data they want and then gain access. So, it's not, it's something that needs to be done. It definitely needs to be done by a professional. Web testing is not something that can be done by inexperienced individuals. There are some guides out there, but really it's more of a manual process for this web testing. And there are some automated scanning that can be done, and that is all done in a manner where, it's more for time constraints than anything, but it really is, it's more of a manual approach because every application or most applications are unique. So, we really want to do this, you want to have, if you have an application or if you've built an application for your company, you want it tested. You specifically want it tested before you go live. If you have what they call a good software development lifecycle, security testing is something that would be part of that lifecycle process. So as it's coded, as it's in development, or when it goes into testing, you'll hear the term user acceptance testing, where you'll have individuals testing the functionality of it. You'd also have your security people evaluating the application for security. And then once it's ready to go live, you really want to have your security team or a security company test it, because all of that data that you're introducing into that application is going to be stored in a database. And that's all of that critical data that we've talked about over and over again about securing. But if the application opens a avenue to that data, then protecting the database itself and putting in all of the security controls that we've talked about is not going to do you any real value, because someone's going to be able to get that data because your application isn't as secure as it should be. So as I said, there's manual testing, there's automated testing, and then there's an organization called OWASP, which is the Open Web Application Security Project. And they always identify what the top 10 vulnerabilities that are currently out there that are impacting most applications. And if an organization at least manages those 10, they're doing a far better job than a lot of other organizations. So as I said, it's OWASP. So if you have an individual that is building an application for you, you definitely want to make sure that they're aware of those 10 vulnerabilities that are out there, and that they are ensuring that as they code this application, they're addressing those. The other challenge with applications is because our applications change on a regular basis. If you own an iPhone or an Android or anything on your computer, if you have third-party software, you're always getting notifications about a feature enhancement. Well, every time an organization performs a feature enhancement, there's always the potential that that feature could turn off a security setting or adjust a security setting, which would make that application vulnerable. So when you introduce new features, again, you want to make sure that someone tests that new version of the application to ensure that any security parameters that have been put in place or any security settings that have been put in place are still there after those features. And it's just unfortunate that sometimes when you do a feature upgrade or service pack, it will reset some of these security settings. You try to avoid it, but sometimes that happens. So that's why it's really important that you do test it before you push it out, because it may actually introduce a vulnerability that you weren't even aware of. And if it's a vulnerability and it's exploitable, it's going to be discovered on the internet fairly quickly, because remember, your applications are right there on the internet at all times. They may or may not sit behind a firewall. They may sit in what we call a demilitarized zone, but in order to reach that application, some of the most common protocols that we use are going to have to be available, whether it be HTTP or HTTPS or file transfers or anything that you need, any protocol that you need to access that application and provide that service is going to have to be allowed to get through that firewall. So it makes that application that much more susceptible, because you really can't put it behind a lot of barriers, because you need it to be available to your end users to get the most value out of it. So it sounds like it's a complex environment. It's just another thing that I think we need to be aware of, that, we're doing a great job, securing our network, we're locking down our operating systems, we're doing our patching. This is just another element of ensuring that our network and that our businesses are secure. And that's making sure that any application that we use or any application that we interact with our clients is secure as well. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a great remainder of your Tuesday, and we will see you next week for a new topic.